So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it today, as I know you are. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which this event is taking place, in the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respect to their elders and families past, present and emerging. I'd like to welcome those that are outside the four walls of this building, as well as those here. We've got a number of people that have dialed in for this lunchtime series. What you can see up ahead of you is the upcoming events over the next 4 weeks for the lunchtime series. And really this has been a pivotal opportunity that the VCCC have initiated. For many of you who might not know, the VCCC represents an alliance for 10 of the major both research and clinical organisations based in Victoria, who are not only committed to cancer prevention and cancer control, but also enhancing the way we deliver care to our patients and their families. Its role to coordinate the collaboration, I think that's something we haven't probably done as well as we should. We tend to be siloed in the way that we do it. So I think one of the most pivotal roles of the VCCC is to integrate us better and allow that coordinated care. This lunchtime series is a really important strategy which allows key messages not just to be delivered to the people in the room, but also the people that can't get here through geography outside the room as well. So we've got 3 wonderful speakers today who are going to introduce us to the WeCan navigational tool for supportive care. And I love the acronym, which is Cancer Supportive Care to Anyone at Any Time and Anywhere, because that's something that I firmly believe in. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karen Boddy, who is the Manager of Cancer Reform at the department. And Karen's going to reflect on some of the strategic priorities on behalf of the government as well as organisations over the last few years, but hopefully then set the scene for us facing forward to what sites such as the WeCan can deliver to patients and their loved ones. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Kate. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about this important topic. So I thought I'd just start off with what is supportive care. It is an umbrella term, and it's about services that support people with cancer, their family and carers. It includes many things: physical, psychological, social, spiritual and information needs. And it is about empathy for the individual patient and their experience and those with them. It is also about other parts of the system. It is about having a capable workforce that are enabled to do their job well. And it is also about designing the system so that all those parts can come together and it can happen. There is a policy environment, and thank you, Kate. The supportive care is a priority item in our reform for cancer, which is an ongoing body of work and never ending. Supportive care has a significant profile in the current and past Victoria cancer plans. The cancer plans really set the direction for what we're trying to do to make a difference to improve care for cancer patients and their families. In 2009, we launched the first policy on providing optimal cancer care, supportive care policy. And the really important thing about this was that it really is about the clinical workforce, and it is the clinical workforce that really deliver supportive care across the patient journey. The integrated cancer services, for those of you that know about them, or for those of you that don't, there are 9 of those in Victoria, and they are there to support health services and clinicians to provide good cancer care, and they are there as a quality improvement focus, therefore, and to work with. So they are a support, but the emphasis really is that it is a clinical role to embed it within patient care. It's not a new concept, although when the policy came out, it has been a challenge to think about using a systems approach to identify and embed good practice. Like many things in quality improvement and making a difference for patients, it's hard work, but it's a good reason to do it. It is there's also a thing that we use as a tool, which are optimal care pathways, which are 7 steps to how to for the patients flow through the system. be it from primary care through to tertiary. And in each of those 7 steps, from point of referral through to survivorship, supported care is embedded. It's everywhere. So that's how important it is. Progress to date. There was a point prevalence study done last year that had a look at the data on which of the population was actually screened using a supported care tool, and the tools allow consistent care to be provided. And we found that 64% of the population was screened. That's really good progress because earlier audit from when the policy was launched showed less than 5%. So that is good, but there's more. The aim is of supported care resources and using them is to really strengthen and embed the delivery of supported care services for patients. And that's why we're here today, because several years ago we wanted to do a refresh of the original resources that supported clinicians and the workforce to provide good care, supported care. And so we sought out Krishna Sami and her team, the experts on this, and over the last 2 years they have refreshed and revised the resources that existed, and those resources are there so that workforce can use them, so that they are available. The voice of consumers and clinicians was informed the process, and there was an establishment of a community of practice, and importantly, the co-design process that was involved led to the creation of the supported care website, which is why we are here today, and to have a good look at what this is about. And I very much would like to take this opportunity to thank Maya and her team for all their very hard work and considerable energy in getting it to this point over the last couple of years so that we can all have access to it. Thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. And I wanted to save this little anecdote until Karen presented what the strategy would look like. And I had to fly into Tassie yesterday for a very, very dear family friend who lost her battle. But I was surrounded by their family and friends in Tassie, and what they shared with me is, how do we get information? You know, how do we know what a chemotherapy cycle looks like, or how do we get information if we're at home and they're nauseated, or how do we tap into things? And it just struck me that there are so many people out there that don't know how to access information. For me, I see myself as a navigator for my patients, first and foremost, but how do their loved ones and their family members also know which is a good website, which isn't? Where do I find this bit of information when you feel that you're alone? It could be in the middle of the day, it could be in the middle of the night. And that's what's really missing. And we can have all the digital tools in the world, but at the end of the day, it has to be a cultural change. And hopefully, Maya, that might come out and we can talk about that in the discussion forum. And that's often why things aren't made fit for purpose. It has to be a cultural change with the clinicians, the caregivers, and the families and their patients, where we become empowered to make sure patients know exactly where they can access worthwhile information. And if they can't, where can they go to? And this is going to serve as a tool. These are enablers. They're not going to provide you with the magic Pandora's box, but they're enablers, but they're very important enablers so that we can navigate what is a complex time for patients, but also complex in terms of the internet and how we access information. Having information, or information's been out there for decades, it's actually enabling them to know how they can search through that web. So on that, are there any major questions for Karen? Otherwise, we might draw out questions towards the end. I'll introduce Professor Maya Krishnami, who's done all the hard work behind this, and those that know Maya know how fantastic she is in this space. She's certainly a team player and a collaborator, so I'm looking forward to seeing the hard work that's come out of this. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Karen, for your kind words and your acknowledgement of the team. And I'll have a chance to thank a number of people who have made today possible. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes just talking about the background of the work and where we've got to, and then more importantly, after we hear from Heather, who's been involved as a consumer expert in the programme, I'll come back and show you some of the resources, which is actually what we're all here to do. But I just really wanted to give you a sense of the thinking behind the work and why it's been done in the way it was done, and I think why it's been able to contribute and deliver so many of the things, Kate, that you talked about that are important to people. How do I find the information that I want? But equally importantly, how do we create opportunity for incredible, committed, but very busy clinicians to easily be able to help their patients navigate to the information that they want and help think about some of the supportive care needs that they may have and how they can be addressed. So I won't talk much about this. Karen set the scene really, but the work comes from just over a decade almost now of work here in Victoria that's really led the way, certainly in Australia, but also to some extent internationally, around recognising the importance of working with people once they have a diagnosis of cancer. And when I mean people, I mean obviously the patient, but also those people who are around them who are also incredibly impacted by that diagnosis. And back as part of the first sort of metric and the way of advocating for organisations to undertake supportive care needs screening and assessment and referral. There was a metric of 50% set for that for all new patients who came into hospital to have their supportive care needs addressed. And as Karen said, there's been a lot of work done, but there was a broad range, as it is with many things, of success around how many patients were being screened. And that's certainly been something that we've seen internationally. It's not been unique here in Victoria. But we have seen a big shift, and the latest sort of point prevalence audit has indicated that we're making even greater gains. So the opportunity for us really was thinking about how can we get even more people early on after their diagnosis screened for their supportive care needs. But the question really is, why now? Why do this now? And I think there were a number of imperatives, and I was approached by Catherine Whitfield before her and Spirit Galatakis. There was obviously the opening of the Victorian Comprehensive Cancer Centre and the 10 alliance partners. That was a real focus on we can drive the best care in the world, the best cancer care in the world, and an assumption that as part of that, you have to have embedded supportive care. If you're really serious about the best care, then having good supportive care is equally important as having knowledgeable treatment. There was a new Victorian cancer plan in the wings, so there was a lot of conversation about how do we continue to strengthen the language around supportive care from there. And there'd also been for a number of years and an ongoing iteration of work around reviewing the patient management frameworks that have now become the optimal care pathways, and a lot of work being driven from the department and through the integrated cancer services around how do we implement those so that both clinicians and systems, but really importantly as well, patients have an awareness of what is an optimal care pathway. How do they ask about that pathway? And how do they know that they're having the right support across that continuum? So it was a really rich, fertile time really for the work. But the real imperative, of course, as always, is that we know that people continue to experience problems that for many people are addressed. But as you'll see from some of these statistics, for many people are not addressed. So we know that around 66%, and there's obviously a range for all these statistics based on the kind of cancer that you have, your age, your gender, many other things, the treatments that you have. But this is just to give you a sense of the sort of nature of the problems. 66% of people approximately will experience a level of fatigue that diminishes their quality of life. 40% of people will worry about things that are natural to worry about a cancer diagnosis, but with the right information and support, that worry can be mitigated to a large extent, not completely, but to a large extent. We know that people don't sleep well. When people don't sleep well, they get anxious, they get more depressed, it's harder for them to tolerate their treatments, and lots of things. 62% of people still complaining of pain, and at least 55% of people saying that they don't get the information that they need at the time that they need it. And that may be around the cancer that they have, that the treatments that they're going to get, information that they need to keep themselves well. And we increasingly hear, and we've heard throughout the course of the study, people want information to be able to self-manage when they want to do that. They want to be able to take control of their own lives and have a voice in that. But even since we've started the study, there are new imperatives coming to light, and the fantastic work being done by the Cancer Council around recognising and responding financial toxicity. So all of these imperatives for going, we should be asking people from the point of diagnosis, is there something you need help with? What is that? What kind of help do you want? And who do you want it from? It is an imperative that we do that for people because we have the skills and knowledge to do it, and we have the resources to do it. So we've heard about what supportive care is, and Karen touched on that, and the work from Margaret Fitch in Canada as early as 1994, telling us there were 5 domains that we have to engage with the people around, whether they're psychological, social, physical, informational and spiritual needs. People have a vast array of needs that may be in some, many or all of these categories. And here in Victoria, the early work that was done and led by Sancha Aranda and her team, Kathy Piggott and people who did a fantastic body of work enabled by the Integrated Cancer Services, that said there will be people who will manage very well if you can give them the advice and support that they need. So don't hold them back by withholding that from them. There will be some people who will need a referral to be able to manage, but it's a fairly light steer. And then there will be other people. If we make room for them by enabling the many and the some to be able to, the many and the all to look after themselves, there will be the some and the few in the system who really need a lot of expert help early on to make sure that they have the best outcomes possible from their cancer diagnosis, irrespective of what that outcome may be for them. So a lot of early work that we as a team have been able to pull on and to build on. We certainly weren't starting from scratch. So I just want to do some acknowledgements. So I've put Tanil and Lisa up in the corner there because this was them on Saturday here at work, getting everything ready for today. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. We've had a remarkable expert reference group who we set up at the beginning of the study and have been not only stalwart supporters and advocates of the work, but have been critical reviewers of everything we've done as a team, which has been really, really important to us. And I put everybody's names there. I don't have time to thank everybody, but I would like as a group to thank you all for your incredible contribution, for keeping us on track and for keeping us true to what we wanted to achieve. But I particularly want to draw your attention to our consumer partners, and you'll see some of them when I play a clip later on. People who've given their time, their expertise, their knowledge, their star and screen stage sort of profile for us to use, not just in the navigation website for patients, but fundamentally importantly, to draw attention back to the health system about why this is so important. So just quickly in the last couple of minutes, we set out to identify opportunities, as Karen said, to refresh the existing resources that were out there that had been developed by Sancha and the team early on, to develop new resources, but really importantly to keep an eye on the people who really will make this happen, the clinicians in the system, and think about how do we give them the education that they need so we can build workforce capability to really make sure that everybody gets the help and support that they need. And we did take a systems level approach. We decided that we wanted to go out and listen and learn from consumers, people in hospitals as clinicians, their administrators, non-governmental organisations, advocacy groups, education experts. We really needed to understand if we want to impact supportive care as our focus of attention, what's happening downstream and upstream that may be barriers or enablers of us really doing that well. So we've had a really broad approach to the work. Sorry, that's a bit light. I'm trying to be very colour coordinated, but I'm not sure how that's come across. But what we did with our expert reference group, underpinned by a lot of work around an international literature review, was we carried out 4 town hall meetings in regional areas and in Metro. We had 82 participants come from across lots of different backgrounds to tell us about their experience of supportive care. We set up the community of practice that you heard about. We've held, I think that should be 7 or 6 community of practice meetings. Across those meetings, we've had 232 people come, either as first time or repeat offenders coming back to those meetings. So we're grateful to all of you. We carried out a co-design study that had 56 participants. We had 3 consumer groups, 3 clinician groups, and then we brought the groups together to say, tell us what you want, tell us how you want it and how you want it delivered. And we've melded all of that together and brought it together, and we'll show you the outcomes of that after we hear from Heather in terms of what we want to launch today. But it's been a broad, inclusive, system-wide approach, because the question we kept asking ourselves was, there's no question that people don't acknowledge the importance of supportive care. Why are we still at 55 or 65%? What is it in the broader system that's making this complex for people? So how do we set out to understand that? So what we heard was the acute service has got the focus at the moment, but cancer care has changed. People with cancer are everywhere. They're ambulatory settings, so we really need to move to a cross-sector approach whilst not losing sight on the importance, obviously, of the acute sector. It's resource dependent. If you're in hospitals, you need people who can do the screening. And it's reliant on busy clinicians to do that. So can we think of ways that we can give some of that control and enablement and awareness back to consumers? It's siloed at the moment. And with that siloing comes lack of equity that Kate was talking about. Some people get it, some people don't. So how do we make this about increasing the breadth of equity? How do we build capability and confidence in the workforce to do this well? And really importantly, how do we make this usual care, business as usual for everyone? So we learned from the community that they said, we know there are resources for those experts, the people who do this all the time. What we want is that first year nurse, physio, OT, junior doctor, who sees the all and the many all the time, to have the confidence to say, do you need help with something? I know how we can help you. And what we heard for the core design in the town hall meetings was people didn't have that confidence. So we really needed to focus our resources on the people who are the all and the many to address the needs of the all and the many. So how have we responded before I stop? We've built consumer awareness because we need people to ask for this. Nobody has asked me what my supportive care needs are. We need to build consumer awareness. We need to build the capability in the workforce to be able to respond confidently to those questions and give them contemporary education approaches. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. It should be, and is, using Meg's words, and you'll hear them later, a right of every person who's affected by a diagnosis of cancer to have their supportive care needs met. And it is the responsibility of every clinician to be able to ask those questions. And we need to build a community-wide approach so that it's not just those of us who are interested, but the broader community who know about supportive care and are exercised enough to be concerned about it and how we access it and what we're doing with it. So I'll come and talk about how we came to WeCan, that we can do this together. We can deliver supportive care to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And the anyone is those of us as practitioners, as researchers, as advocates. It's those of us as consumers. It's anyone in the system that we can do it any time, beginning of diagnosis, halfway through, survivorship, end of life care, whenever it may be. And it's everywhere, whether you're in a hospital, in a GP practice, whether you're in a palliative care unit. That's what we want to try and achieve with this. So I'll show you a sneak peek in a moment about what we're going to do. Thank you.
It's now my absolute pleasure to ask Heather to come and share some insights with us. So Heather Beanlone started her journey 28 years ago and is a committed participant to other people that share the same experiences. She's still here today and very active in this space, and has been part of the reference group that and here today as a consumer representative, which really is representing everybody that deserves a voice in the room. So Heather, welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's my privilege to speak on behalf of consumers who participated in this review of supportive care in cancer. Many people have contributed over the last 2 years, so I hope that you will agree, when you see the videos, etc., that we've improved the cancer resources and the training materials to strengthen supportive care for all Victorians affected by cancer. My diagnosis came in February 1991, so that's 28 years ago. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'd have to say that there wasn't a lot of supportive care at that time. Cancer was not discussed. I was a nurse. We didn't discuss these things with our patients. And I have to say, only a few of the doctors were good at delivering information. In the private hospital where I worked as a nurse and midwife, the good ladies of the Mastectomy Association visited and on request provided support and a soft padded prosthesis, which they made lovingly, to women who'd had a recent mastectomy. That was the supportive care that we got as breast cancer patients. Breast care nurses were not yet available, And we nurses did the best that we could in the limitations that we had in our practice. Real support happened when a lady called Marcia O'Keefe, who was an engineer here in Victoria, diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. She put a little letter in the Age and asked for women who had been affected by breast cancer whether they'd like to join a group for advocacy and support. That was the start of the Breast Cancer Action Group in 1994. And out of their advocacy grew the Breast Cancer Network Australia, very ably led by Lynn Swinburne, AO. And that emerged and is still, we all know of the wonderful work that the Pink Lady does right around Australia, advocating for women, for getting new drugs, new treatments, and raising awareness of breast cancer. In 1996, the Cancer Council Victoria had the wisdom and foresight of a lady called Pat Dobson, who commenced a telephone service called the Breast Cancer Support and Information Service, which I joined in response to a request, and I met my wonderful friend, Avis McPhee, AM. We gave peer support to women in Victoria and their families, and they were matched to our diagnosis and our treatment. So in my case, I spoke to women who'd had a double mastectomy and reconstruction at that time. Sue Lockwood, AM, and fellow members of the Breast Cancer Action Group enlisted the support of Women's Health Victoria with DHS funding to establish WeCan, which is a peer support and information service, which is now called Counterpart, and which includes gynecological cancers. This service has expanded over Victoria to provide ongoing assistance to cancer patients and their families, and their work is ongoing. My long involvement in peer support in these organisations is a reflection of how valuable I see peer support for all cancer patients and their loved ones at the time of diagnosis, of treatment, and in their returning to normal life. Information that's evidence-based, support of those who are closest to you, exercise, nutrition, access to your health team, information of your clinical options. These are things that are vital for our well-being. I've never forgotten Professor Sancha Aranda saying many years ago at a conference I was attending that the 4 pillars of cancer care were surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and supportive care. So much has been achieved by many organisations in the past. I'm excited and enthusiastic for the future. Cancer patients have new and updated resources to assist them to live well. I commend to you WeCan, Cancer Supportive Care, anyone, anytime, anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, and for all your advocacy and support throughout the project. Now, this is the time where you get nervous because you start to rely on IT and get into the website. And let's see if I can, there we go. So what I just want to do is just recap and explain what I'm going to talk about. So what have we done? We've developed a series of resources that are about raising awareness, increasing the activity around supportive care, and in doing that, having greater impact across the state. So I want to talk about what we've done first, which is the WeCan website, and then talk a bit about the education and building workforce capability. Play some clips for you around people's rights to have access to supportive care needs, screening and assessment, and how we advocate for that as a responsibility for all clinicians. And when I say clinicians, I'm inclusive of everybody right across the care sector. And also what we've developed in terms of enabling building community awareness. And so I want to open up the website, but before I do that, I really want to acknowledge properly Tennille and Lisa, who have worked incredibly hard on this project, but particularly in getting us to this point today. So thank you both very much for your passion. Now then, keep your fingers crossed. There you go. So this is the WeCan site. I'm sorry, as it appears there. So I just want to draw your attention. So as you go in, we've had it reviewed by many, many people. We've kept it clean, we've kept it uncluttered. What you see is an introduction to what it's about. It is a site to help people affected by cancer to find information, resources, and support services they need. But the piece I really want to draw your attention to below, perhaps before I move on and show you what's on the site, is this piece. What we've been able to do here is actually on the back of incredible work that's happened across Victoria. There are a remarkable suite of support services, information, resources for people across the state. All we've done really is collate them. We've heard from people over and over again, I just can't find the information. I can't get to it, and when I do get to it, it takes me half an hour to find anything that's of relevance to me, and I give up in the end. So our success of the website is really in thanks to many of the organisations that you'll see in a moment when I show you some examples. So people come into the website, and the first thing we said we wanted to do is raise awareness. So I'm going to play the first minute and a half or so of this clip from Janet. This goes on for 5 minutes, so I won't play all of it. But I just want to give you a sense of what people see when they land on the website.
For those who've just been told they've got cancer, it is a huge emotional change. Many things happen.
So I think it's important on diagnosis that you sit with yourself for a while and think, what do I need? I guess it was a matter of me trying to understand and assess what it was that I felt I needed. So in that swirl, what sort of support do I need at that particular stage? I think that's crucial. And if I couldn't work out what it was I needed, then saying, I need to talk to you, something's not working for me. I need to talk to you about what it is we can do. Who can we talk to? Who can we find to help me work through this? Think about what's going to help you at this particular stage now, and then we'll look for where that support is.
So I just wanted to play that piece for you, because what we'd heard from people was that they wanted to know from other people who'd been through a similar situation, what was happening, what was supportive care. And so one of the things we heard from the town hall and the community of practice and the co-design was, we need consumers talking to consumers. Find help, ask for help. It's your right to have this help. And so the first thing that happens on the website is that people are brought into this description, this rich explanation of what supportive care is and how important it is. And then go back to that one. So, oops, that wasn't what I meant to do. So just let me flick through. So we were really very exercised about being able to show people how important it was. I'm just going to go back to the site if I can. We close that one. There we go. So people are introduced, but then what we wanted people to know was, what are your needs? Where might you be experiencing problems? They may be physical, they may be emotional, they may be spiritual. And part of that is about normalizing for people that it's okay if you have emotional needs, it's okay if you have spiritual needs, and they are as important and relevant as the physical needs you may have or your questions around your treatment. And what we wanted people to be able to do was say, well, actually, when you come to hospital, one of the things that's always been very much managed from the acute side is the use of the distress thermometer and problem list. And so we built into the website, based on the feedback, the opportunity for people to complete the distress thermometer. And so if somebody says, I have a distress of 4, sorry, I'm just heading down, it brings up advice about what you might want to do. And one of the really important pieces, obviously, is giving people advice about, go back to your team, take this information back. They can click on the problems on the side for what might be of relevance to them. They can download it, they can take it back with them to their GP, to their hospital team. But really importantly, the other thing is there's a link there to the Cancer Council Victoria 1311 phone support line where people can ring an expert cancer nurse and get advice and have their navigation and a pathway around all of the supports that are enabled through that. So we're trying to link people with all of the supports that they need in one site. So there's that piece that people can do. And as the score gets higher, I'll just show you now. So if people are very distressed and are scoring 8, it comes up with advice about what they might want to do. There's a link there to take them immediately to refer about how to get back to your team quickly, how to get a hold of Beyond Blue or many other organisations that may be there for people. So we built that sort of safety net in, but all the way through, we're advocating to people, print this off, take it with you, show it to your clinical teams. So the other piece is people always have questions, of course, about their cancer types. And so we've got information in there for people ready, for example, if somebody has a diagnosis of lung cancer, where they can go and find information about the optimal care pathway. So it links to the consumer versions of the optimal care pathways so that people have a sense of what they should be having, when they should be having it. It takes them to the best resources around where they can get help and support and advice. So it takes them straight away to the information that they need without having to go and look for it themselves and spend hours trawling doing that. There's a section on common concerns. So if people have concerns, for example, around their appearance or eating, let's see if this comes up now for me, it tells you, what you can do, where you can find advice and support around that sort of stuff, and many, many aspects. Let's see if that page has come up. It's being a bit slow to load. I'll just give it a second and see if it can. It's very colourful, so I'm going to try and hang on for a second. No, it's not going to play. So there's a whole sort of tablet of images for people around eating, sleeping, transport, accommodation, with lots and lots of different resources for people. And then very importantly, there's a section for people who perhaps their first language is in English, they may be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people, they may need interpreter services. So again, really quick access for people to find supports that are relevant to them, depending on who they are, what their personal circumstances are. So we've kept it really clean and clear for people. It really is a portal for people to be able to get to the stuff that they need quickly. So I'm going to close that down. So that's the primary sort of navigation resource. I put that there in case the website didn't open, but you can see that's the common concerns. It has these really nice images on there. You link underneath and it takes you to all sorts of advice and supports. So that's the consumer facing piece around raising awareness. And then there was the workforce capability. And by the end of this week, we hope we'll be live on the EveryQ website. So I've got some previews for you of what will be on there. So we heard from clinicians, there are some fantastic resources already available on EveryQ and through the initial work that was done by the Department of Health. One of them has 20 hours of learning, one of them has 2 hours of learning. And what we heard when we did the town hall, the community practice, was actually the whole context of cancer care has shifted. And clinicians were saying, I'm lucky if I've got 20 minutes to do anything. So what I want is a resource that I can look at, and what the integrated cancer services staff are saying is we need resources we can use quickly to build capability. We need something where we can get a grab with these clinicians to say, this is why this is important. So we go through and people can do interactive activities around what are the clinical standards of supportive care? What should people be having? What are the domains of supportive care? And you link on the buttons and it takes you in and gives you information and gives you guidance about how you might want to engage with that sort of stuff. We want people to be aware of what are the most common needs that people are experiencing. And so you can go on, you can link on the buttons on the side. It'll tell you the sort of prevalence of those problems, the incidence of those problems, and it'll give you some information again around how you do that. I just want to really acknowledge Kwan here, who's been working with us over the last sort of couple of weeks to really help us move the module forward. The clinicians can go in, they can learn about the 4 steps of supportive care. So there's really important things. Screen people for their needs from point of diagnosis and continuously over time. It tells clinicians about the importance of continuously asking. Don't assume because you've asked once that needs are static. It talks about the importance of discussing those needs, of referring people on if they want, and really importantly, documenting that broadly. You can go in, you can link on the module. It'll tell you about what is an appropriate health record, what might you want to document, where would you want to do that. And then as you move through the module, it brings people to a conclusion that talks about some of the evidence about why it's important and why it should be a right of people. But once more, what we've done is we've really given primacy to the voice of the consumer. So this is the last piece of video that comes up on the education module. It's just a minute and a half. My goodness, if I don't do that, there we go.
The care that you feel you need is not offered to you. And sometimes just sharing everyone who comes into contact with that patient needs to be mindful of their needs and their requirements.
I think it's very important that healthcare professionals recognise that there are support services that should be referred on to patients.
You don't want to have to ask for these things. These things should come as a right. These things should come automatically.
People have to be lucky. There's a lot of people that are young and ask for. Don't know. Of course, they might have the doctor that says freaking out.
So we hope what we've done for the module is interspersed some of these video exits so that people clinicians can hear continuously the importance of this for people and why we really need to engage and embed supportive care really as a cornerstone of quality cancer care. So the other piece that we wanted to do, the deliverable, was building community awareness. So we've got Twitter account, Facebook, Instagram, and of course the postcards, and I'll talk a little about the implementation and dissemination in a moment. So please take these with you when you leave, spread them far and wide. We want as many people as possible to know about them. Follow us on Twitter, go on to Facebook, and very importantly, of course, share the information about the WeCan site with your clinical colleagues as well as with your other patient, consumer and family members. So what's next? Before I do that, perhaps small in the corner, but there are a couple of people that I want to acknowledge. Peter Johns, Martin Wirth, Sarah Nash-Knop, who without this work, we would not be where we are. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your help and your expertise in helping us really make this what it's become. So what's next for us now after the launch? We'll be launching again at the VIX conference at the end of the week, and next week at Monash is obviously the implementation piece. So there's a big workshop coming up with the Integrated Cancer Services where we'll be building tailored implementation programs that will think about, for each of the organisations that the ICs work across, where do we need to focus our attention? So if we have an organisation that is screening at 20%, how do we get them up to where we want them to be? Do we attack the execs on the board? Do we have a mandate for the quality and safety people? Is it a mandate for the consumer advisory people? Is it a mandate around the clinicians, or is it all of those? So really importantly, this is the beginning, this is not the end of the launch, and we will work very closely to make sure that the implementation framework is as robust as possible. We will be disseminating widely, and really importantly, we will have a comprehensive evaluation framework. So what is the impact of the resources? What is the impact over time on the number of people who are being screened during the care, the beginning of the care, during the care and after the care? So we have a long program of evaluation ahead of us. But I would just like to finish by saying thank you very much indeed to everybody who's taken part, to those who picked us up when we're going, don't think we can do this, don't think we can keep going, and said, of course you can keep going, and that's invariably been the consumers. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And to all the speakers, and now I'm going to open it to the room. I'm going to encourage some audience participation, so by drawing people out. But I think, you know, the thing that resonates for me is when we meet patients, it's probably the most disempowering position that they've ever been in. We're creatures of habit and control by nature. We get up in the morning, we decide what we're going to have for breakfast, what we're going to wear, what we're going to do today, and suddenly the rug's pulled out from under you. And I think one of the most powerful ways we can reinstate control is actually by empowering them with strategies. So yes, they can't prescribe the chemo or the radiotherapy or do the surgery or hang it, but they can wake up every day and go, this is what I'm going to do today. This is how I'm going to, you know, support myself through it. And then the second component to that is we often focus on, oh, I've got chemo, I've got radiotherapy. That's the easy bit. It's actually the bit that comes after it. It's the 3 weeks or the 3 months or the 6 months. And that's what this resonates. This is how you get through your therapy so that you can benefit from it and get on with life and become someone like Heather who advocates for people further on. So I'm such a supporter of what you're doing, and it does need to be a cultural change. But they're the nuances. We need to actually look at the journey in its totality. So on that, I'm going to try and bring some consumers into the room because I've spotted 3. So I've got Heather, and I saw Meg, and I saw Sophie. So I noticed what the other thing that I love about this tool is our needs are not the same for all patients across tumour groups, or in fact, even over time. So what your needs might be when you first meet your clinicians might be very different in a week's time, or 2 weeks' time, or 2 days' time. And I think just watching that website, what I loved about it is the ability for it to become dynamic. I could complete it today, and I might complete it in a very different way in 2 or 3 days' time. And Heather gave a beautiful rendition about what was missing for her in the breast cancer space. But in fact, Heather, there are some tumours, rarer tumours, that don't even have those supports today. So here I'm perhaps going to draw out from you how this might overcome those access and quality differentials for people that don't have Breast Cancer Australia and the breast cancer nurses. And then I'm going to ask Meg and perhaps Sophie, because I did see them in the room. So Sophie, you know, what it means for you in terms of getting you through your journey and that ability to be dynamic. So please, Heather.
Yes, I'm very aware that breast cancers have a lot of support, and prostate cancer and the rare cancers are the ones who, when we've had conferences, they're the ones who have no one, and the young people as well, who find it very difficult to find peer support. While you may, I see this program as being able to link people. So you might be someone with a rare cancer up in Mildura, and they're able to match you with someone in the state, or maybe another part of Australia, or maybe overseas, and you have access to the possibility of speaking with them. And it's just it's a quantum leap really from what happened 30 years ago. And I'm just so pleased that people have the opportunity to have updated resources and links to different organisations like the Cancer Council and to community groups as well.
Heather, you touched on a really important component, which is isolation. And we often talk about geographical isolation, and that's taught us a great deal. But in fact, you can be isolated only 5 kilometres from the major centre. So I'm really glad that you brought that into the dialogue. And I think what this does is it's not just for regional and rural and isolated patients, it's for everybody, which is fabulous. Thank you, Heather. Sophie or Meg, have you got a...
Thank you for the opportunity. Just to add, I totally agree with what Heather has just said. Just to add to that, I think from my perspective, I think this is a brilliant approach. It makes supportive care very accessible. What's refreshing about it is that we've actually taken into consideration linguistic minorities and how to provide them with the opportunities to be able to access all of that. The thing that I think is the challenge is that as we develop different tools for consumers, patients to be able to access supportive care, we're also looking at empowered consumers. And as they become more empowered, hopefully they'll have a partnership with the clinicians to be able to say, what's my supportive care? What are my opportunities? So that we actually reduce that gap between what's being delivered currently and what should be delivered.
Yeah, connectivity.
So well done, everybody.
Connectivity is so important, isn't it? Well, I might get you to come to the stage with me because I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to bring you into it. And perhaps, Meg, before I get, perhaps Meg, please share your insights first, and then I'm going to draw a question from our people that have joined us outside.
Lucky that my 25+ year journey, I've never been offered supportive care. So for me, this is the most wonderful tool that I've ever seen. But I would like to stress that when you said a while ago that this empowers consumers and gives them the ability to find information, it needs to empower clinicians as well. And to me, that's the very important side of supported care, that one aspect is to have empowered consumers, but unless all clinicians take on a listening perspective and hear their consumers, view them as whole human beings, not just cancer patients, and realise that there is a lot more going on in their lives, and access tools like this and refer patients to tools like this, then this becomes a one-sided tool, and it needs to come from both sides. And that would be my key point.
Yeah, and that you sort of stole my thunder for the next segue, but I'm glad you did, and I'm going to bring a question and get Maya to contribute to it. And I think what often happens is for both the patient and the doctor, privacy is to treat the tumour, and it's often only in reflection as you move forward. And so, Elizabeth, I just spotted you, so I'm going to bring you in as a clinician, because I was going to bring the clinicians into the room. And I think you're absolutely right, is sometimes we don't know the information, and the reason I'm going to bring Elizabeth in is she's been pivotal in looking at fatigue, which I've not yet met a patient of mine that fatigue hasn't impacted them. And they're often trying to hold down jobs, families, and so it is really important that clinicians know, if they don't know what the information is, where to get it or who to turn to. So for me, I do think it's a two-way double adapter empowerment and enablement. So thank you for bringing that in. So Elizabeth.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks for bringing fatigue in and the whole clinician aspect of it in. I think it is a two-sided thing, both empowering patients or survivors, whatever you like to call consumers, but also the clinicians to know how to approach these issues. Providing resources for them is really, really important. One of the things that I've discovered in the small bit of work that I've been doing here in preparing to launch some guidelines for cancer-related fatigue is that clinicians just haven't had the helping hand, the pathway to actually find the resources. So I think this resource is going to be really, really helpful.
Thanks, Elizabeth. As well. And I think as a compliment, Maya, and as part of answering this question and drawing on those, there's been a question asking, is this going to go national? So clearly it's resonating not just with you in the room, which is wonderful to hear, but people who are outside the room.
Thank you. And so many things I could say. I think Elizabeth, the point you just made about making it easy for clinicians, and one of the things we really want to do before I respond to Kate is so that hopefully when there's a really busy clinic or whatever the environment is, and a clinician feels, actually, I can't go there now because I haven't got the time, at least now they can say, have a look at the website. Have a look at the distress and long-term problem checklist. Come back, and when you're back next time, we can have that conversation rather than feeling I just can't go there and there's no conversation at all. So I think thank you for flagging that. And Kate, thank you for your question about going national. I think I think there is obviously an opportunity to do that. I think the template of the website lends itself, I think, very easily to replacing the Victorian resources that we've put in there with statewide resources, and I would really be delighted if that were the case. So at the moment, obviously within our context, our focus now is working here in Victoria to make sure that we actually see a return on investment in this work and see and look carefully about what happens. But I think it's an easy template for people to be able to use.
And on that too, in terms of scalability, I do a lot of work in delivering regional healthcare, and our needs are not unique. In fact, they're almost more exposed in a place like WA or Northern Territory. But what I think Victoria has, which is advantageous, is we are only the second biggest state. ACT, if I include that with a third smallest state, over Tasmania, and we're quite concentrated from a population density. So Victoria actually can lead the way in terms of networking because we are more connected. We do have things like the VCCC. So we have an inherent connectivity within Victoria that can test case these sort of strategies to then scale. So Maya, that's fabulous that you're going to test case it here, and then it's basically taking it to wax in WA or Northern Territory or New South Wales and saying, is this fit for purpose in other states? I'm looking around the room deliberately too to see if anyone's got their hands up, and I'd really love to see some questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep drawing people in the audience out. Thank you.
Thank you. The subject of loneliness is an issue for the general population, as I understand it. Something of the order of 25–30% of people throughout Australia suffer from it. What about cancer patients? On your website and your topic of problems, is loneliness listed?
There's not, we don't call it loneliness, but what we've done through the resources, we've got sections on if people need time to talk to somebody, if they want to go to something, if somebody wants to find a support group, or, you know, we've got lots of links for people to be able to ring. Prime example of the 13, 11, 20 cancer clubs. If you need to talk to somebody, Beyond Blue is on there, Movember is on there. You know, we have a whole raft of things. There's a link to something called Gather My Crew, which is an opportunity where you can pull people around you. So it's not termed loneliness, but actually, you know, it's a very, very important point. And we know for people with cancer that it's actually a prognostic indicator as well, as it is for many other things.
I would suggest you end the topic because there's a very important psychological issue. There's considerable research on it.
Thank you.
And it's probably terminology a little bit. We often think about isolation as a form of loneliness. So, you know, and what I love about this website. Yeah, it's a good point. Terminology is so important. Is that you're not trying to be a single-dimensional resource site. You're trying to be a connector, because as we learn more information is going to come, and you've connected beautifully with resource organisations, Cancer Council Victoria, Leukemia Foundation. As they grow and build their resources, they can just merely connect with you, which is, I think, is pivotal. It's a portal, as you described so beautifully.
And I think it's a really important point around the sustainability of it. We talked a lot about that. And if you build something like this, there's no point building it if the project stops and then everything stops working. And so for us, it was really pulling together these incredibly reputable organisations with the knowledge that they will keep growing. Their work will continue to be of quality. So the links will be live. And the most we'll have to do perhaps is fix the odd link. But there is no risk of us then having a site that has old information or stuff that isn't relevant.
I agree, Mike. And in fact, there was a question on the website as well, which can draw this in, and it comes back to make your point, is as with a site like that is so agile and flexible, it means that people will keep using it. And we know we're automatic people. The more we use it, the more user-friendly it is, the more fit for purpose, we keep using it. But as soon as it stops or becomes redundant or outdated, people stop using it. So that agility and flexibility is actually really important, not just for sustainability, but for education and orientation for clinicians and patients. And I think that was largely the question, and that's why the website's back up there. One of the questions was, how are we going to educate and enable clinicians in this space? And that's going to be part of your implementation, but
it is, and just very briefly, so thank you for the question about how we're going to inform people. So we've been incredibly lucky through obviously having the network of the integrated cancer services, but we also have and had throughout the project incredible support from the primary health networks, from palliative care organisations. We'll be working through the Cancer Nurses Society of Australia. We'll be working through lots of the different professional groups. So there'll be work around direct clinicians in Victoria and how we reach out to those through our integrated cancer services framework, but then a lot of work around how we get to professional organisations as well.
Got a question at the back. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a bit of I've got to see this happening before I believe it. I've been complaining about that door and clack, 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 and it still goes clack, 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 clack. You've got spotlights on the two screens up there that make it very hard to read, and that's I've been complaining about. WeCan, when I saw that the first thing, I thought it was Commonwealth Bank. That's the only thing. Yeah. And the fourth thing, I went down to the front counter on the ground floor and asked about some information. And they said, oh, yeah, we can give that to you, but there's a cost to it. Could cost you between $100 and $200. And I thought, well, that's not really helpful. So we'll give it a few months and see whether anything
or maybe we'll just
whether you can fix the door, the spotlight.
Maybe we could just challenge you to have it test case the website and feedback to Maya if it's clunky or you don't find that it's simple to go through. It is close to 2 o'clock. Is there anyone else that's got any? Yes, please.
Just very quickly, Marilyn Doyne, I'm being a consumer advocate.
One of the stars of the video.
Yes, no, I've been on the journey for 22 years as well as a carer as well. And one of the main questions I've been asked over that time, during the night, in the middle of the night, you go on Facebook with someone you're supporting, or you get a phone call or an email, Why wasn't I told? And it's come from people, particularly regional people, but it's come from people who see their GPs, who see their oncologists, who are bombarded with leaflets and booklets by well-being people. But it's too consuming, it's too overwhelming. And the very simple things they want to know is that people are new normal. That waking up during the night and not being able to sleep is normal. That the financial burdens that you have is part of the journey, and they don't know how to deal with it. The information that's been available hasn't been clear, it hasn't been specific. And when I saw the name of this, it excited me in its simplicity. It was refreshing because we can, full stop, period. We can. We're empowered to do it, but it needs to be done in partnership with clinicians, with all the allied health people, with everybody else working together and keeping it simple, answering questions that haunt cancer patients day and night. They're there, the answers are there simply. If you want to know about your cancer, tap on that little image that's in the OCPs. It's as simple as that, and the up-to-date information is there. It's not a pile of leaflets or booklets like the GPs have got on their desks, and other people just throw it out because it's too hard. This is simplicity, and it's refreshing, and it's exciting, and I just see the beginning of something new, and I want to congratulate the team.
Thank you. Beautifully said, Meryl. And you know, often when you get your little cardi bag, it's not relevant, right? That's why they throw it out, because I've got 10 booklets that I can't even get my head on straight. But in a week's time, you might want to know something. And that's I think what's beautiful about it. So again, I think on Meryl's final points, I really want to congratulate Maya and her team. I am very excited to see how this goes. And it's been a privilege to be part of the launch today. So thank you, and thank you everyone for participating.